Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Neurosketch. This is Dr. Kenny and today we are going to discuss the elements of myology which makes up the whole muscular system, and let's do it together. This is how we're going to move today, and for the this video is divided into two this topic is divided into two videos, and this is the first video. So without further ado, let's go to terminologies. We have some associated structures, the structure that are associated with the muscular system, and we have a tendon. A tendon is a tough, it's a tough, rough connective tissue that will connect a muscle to the bone, a muscle to a bone. For example, this one is a muscle over here. This is a muscle, and this is the tendon. This is a muscle. This is the tendon. This is a muscle, and this is a tendon. So a tendon will always be there to connect a muscle to a bone, a muscle to a bone. Fascia. So a fascia is tough, sheet-like connective tissue that is always there to protect and cover tissues, for example muscles. So we have example of fascia like fascia lata, we have thoracolumbar fascia and all that. So we'll get used to as we are moving. And we have a muscle has got two important attachments. So we have origin and insertion. Origin of a muscle is the point, it is the bone from which the muscle is originating from, and always, most of the time this bone is immovable, is stationary. So a muscle is coming from a stationary bone, from a stationary or relative stationary, and it's going to attach to the more movable bone so as to move this bone, because the purpose of most of these skeletal muscles is to move different body parts. So the body part that will be moved is the muscle, is the arm, is the bone from the bone to which the muscle is inserting. So these points can also be described as proximal attachment and the distal attachment. So origin is also known as the proximal attachment, and it is attaching relatively to the stationary bone, a bone that does not move or moves slightly with respect or with comparison to the insertion. And the muscle is going to insert the bone that is more movable so as to move that bone, and most of the time the muscle will contract so as to pull the insertion towards the origin. It's going to the muscle is contracting to pull the distal attachment toward the proximal attachment. Okay, so we encounter this terminology every now and then. So what is myology? So myology comes from two Greek words, myo, which means muscle, and logos, which means study. So myology simply means the study of muscles and the muscular system. All the muscles in the human body contribute to what is known as the muscular system. So the muscular system will consist of all the muscles of the body. But what the muscle is, what is a muscle? So a muscle is a contractile tissue. It's a contractile tissue. Remember, we have basic four tissues. One of them is a muscle, but the other ones are the epithelium, connective tissue, and the nervous tissue. So we have basic four tissues, and muscle is one of them. And the muscle, being a tissue, it is made up of a number of cells, and the cells that will make a muscular tissue are known as the myocytes. Remember, we have said the myo means muscle, and cytes we know means a cell. So a myocyte is the muscle cell. But because the muscle cell, it is like a little bit long, a thread like, it is known as the muscle fiber. So a muscle fiber will also refer to the muscle tissue that is the same thing. So what are the types of muscles? So there are so many classifications when talking about the muscles. So and the classification are based with different they have different bases. For example, a muscle can be classified based on whether or not is voluntarily controlled, whereby we'll have voluntary muscles and involuntary muscles. But we'll have classification that are based on the appearance of the muscles, whether or not the muscle is striated. So we have striated muscles and unstriated muscle, or the unstriated muscles are also known as the smooth muscles. This will be based on the strips, striation, the strips like that appear on microscope. And then we have also classification based on the location of these muscles. So we have skeletal and somatic muscles versus visceral muscles, and then these are the muscular tissue. So what are the types of the muscular tissue? We have three basic muscular tissues, and this is a skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and a cardiac muscle. You will agree with me that both skeletal muscle and the cardiac muscle, they have striations. So if you're taking a closer look, you see these striations, then these appear under microscope. So this is why they are known as striated muscles. So skeletal muscle and cardiac muscles are known as striated muscle. On the other hand, smooth muscle has got no striation, so it's smooth that because it does no strips, and that's what makes it smooth. So all of these muscles, they have a lot of features in common, but they differ in terms of microscopic anatomy, location of these muscles, and how they are controlled, how they respond into how they are controlled and they respond into nervous and endocrine system. So we will discuss each one in turn, and let's start with the skeletal muscle tissue. So it is known as the skeletal muscle tissue because the primary purpose of this muscle, of this muscular tissue, is to move the skeleton. That's why it's known as the skeletal muscles. This also means that most of the skeletal muscles will attach to the bones, but we have some other skeletal muscles that are not attaching to the bone, and we discuss about them. Some of them they attach to the skin, and some are even attaching to the other muscles. So the skeletal muscle, as we have said, it is striated muscle because of this strip, like when you looking under microscope. And skeletal muscles, they are primarily voluntary. Muscles. Like you decide to move the muscle, you decide to move different parts of the body. So the skeletal muscles, they are voluntary. Remember, we've said that most of these muscles, these three muscular tissue will be differentiated or will behave different on the manner in which they are controlled by the nervous system and the manner which are responding to the endocrine and all that, but also under microscope. So so as I've said, the skeletal muscles, they are voluntary, and they are striated, and they move the skeleton. So most of the named muscles in the skeleton, in the muscular system, they are skeletal muscles. Most of the skeletal muscles are named, they have names, and most of the named muscles, they are skeletal system. We have few named smooth muscles and of course cardiac muscles, but most of them, they are skeletal muscles. So let's discuss the function of the muscular tissue. So the muscular tissue has got four key function, and these key functions, they will depend whether this muscle, maybe through a sustained contraction or through an alternating contraction and relaxation. So there are two manners in which the muscle will work. Number one is by sustained contraction, and number two is by alternating, whether contraction, relaxation, and all that. So number one, the primary function of the muscle is producing movement, producing movement. So the movements can be the movements of the whole body, like walking from a place to place, or like running from here to there. But we can have like the movements of different parts of the body, for example raising the arm, and when you want to like take a cup of tea and all that. So all these are the movements, and that does not need further explanation. But we know that muscles can also produce heat through shivering. When you have like you feel extremely cold and then you start like shivering and all that. So that's actually the muscle that are sliding against one another to produce heat. So like it's a friction against the muscles that will produce heat, and that's one of the function of the muscles, basic function of the muscles. But stabilizing body positioning, like the muscles, they are stabilizing the joints, the joints. Once the joints are stabilized, the body position is determined. For example, we have the muscles that will control the neck, so because the neck, how can I make it, like we have a lot of muscles in the neck that help to maintain the shape, the position of the head. But we have the muscles of the back that will help you to maintain your sitting position without even leaning into something. But even standing, we depend on muscles, because the muscles will stabilize the joints of the lower limbs, the knee joints, and some other joints, so as to have the stable positioning. But another important is the storing substance within the body. Okay, so storage of something within the body. For example, we have, like, we all know that we have cardiac sphincter and the pyloric sphincter, and the pyloric sphincter will contract, so that to prevent foods from entering the intestine from the stomach. And we know that the stomach acts as the temporary storage of food. So this sphincter is a muscular thing. It is made of muscles, muscle, even though it's a smooth muscle, but it is a muscle. So it will contribute to the storage of food within the stomach. We know, like, the heart muscle will contract to push the blood from the heart to the rest of the body, and we know that will fall under moving substance within the body. For example, the heart will contract to push the blood into different parts of the body. But we have vessels. The vessels will also contract and relax to propel the blood from point to point. But peristalsis, for example, in the gastrointestinal tract, for example, in the esophagus, peristalsis, the muscles of the esophagus will contract and relax, alternating contraction, relaxation to result into movement of foods from point to point. But also we know ejaculation, contraction within the the gonadal system, that will result into propel of this ejaculatory material from a point to point. So we have seen these are the basic function of the muscular tissue. What are the adaptation, something like adaptation, the properties of the muscular tissue? So in order to accomplish the above mentioned function of the muscle, we have some properties of the muscles that will make it possible. Number one is the electrical excitability. So the ability of the muscle to respond to electrical impulse is very, very important. It's very, very important, because we know that most of these muscles, they are coordinated, they are like monitored by the nervous system. The nervous system will determine whether or not the muscle to contract and all that. So the ability of the muscle to respond into this electrical stimulus, this nervous stimulus, is very, very, very important, because it will determine whether or not this muscle will work. And number two is contractility. The contractility, the ability of the muscle of the muscular tissue to contract forcefully when stimulated without a damage. So the ability of the muscular tissue to contract forcefully when stimulated by these electrical impulse, the electrical impulse. Number 3 is extensibility. So extensibility, the ability of the muscle to stretch within limits, of course, stretch within limits without being damaged. That is extensibility. And lastly is elasticity. So elasticity is the ability of the muscle to return into its original shape after being extended or contracted. So we know that the muscle is contractable, it's a contractile tissue. So after it has been contracted, or it has been stretched, and then it has to regain its original function, original structure and shape, and that is elasticity. All of these properties are very, very important when discussing about the muscular tissue, because they will determine how the muscle behave and how the muscles work. All right, so let's talk about the organization of the skeletal muscles, organization within the skeletal muscle. So what is this? This is the bone. So this is the muscle. What connects a muscle to bone? Of course, that is a tendon. So a tendon will connect a muscle to the bone, but this is a skeletal muscle, because skeletal muscle will move the bone. So the skeletal muscle will be connected to the bone by a tendon. A skeletal muscle is covered by a thin layer of membrane, which is known as epimysium. The epimysium. But you see, a skeletal muscle is made up of a lot of these bundles, small bundles, and these bundles, we call them the fascicles. And one is fascicle, and this is a fascicle. So a skeletal muscle is made up of a lot of fascicles, and this is a fascicle. Of course, a fascicle is covered by also a thin layer of membrane, which is known as the perimysium. So a perimysium, the thin layer of membrane that is covering the fascicle. But you see, again, the fascicle has got a lot of small bundles that are bundled together. So small bundles that are bundled together, and these bundles, we call them the muscle fibers. Remember, I've just told you that the muscle fiber is also known as the myocyte. The myocyte is also known as the muscle fiber, because it is a cell, of course, but it's very long. It's a long cell. That's why it's known as a muscle fiber. So let's talk about this muscle fiber in detail. So the muscle fiber is also known as the myocyte, and this is the myocyte. And let's discuss about the myocyte. The myocyte, the muscle cell. Myocyte, the muscle cell, because it is a cell. So a cell has got every cell has got a nucleus, correct? Yes, it is a cell. It has a nucleus, and as we know, a lot of this so cell has got also a cell membrane. The three basic structure of the cell: nucleus, a nucleus, cell membrane, and the cytoplasm. So what is the cell membrane of the muscle cell is known as a sarcolemma. So sarcolemma is the specialized cell membrane of the muscle cell. Of course, because also it's a this sarcolemma, it has like transverse, it has like extension, like invagination, like extension of this membrane that goes through the muscle fiber, the muscle tissue, and this is known as the transverse tubule. And we see a transverse tubule is opening on the other end and opening on outside, which enables the interstitial fluid to go through the transverse tubule, and the interstitial fluid will have some ions, calcium and other ions that are very, very important in propagating the action potential. We see how that one goes. But we're going back. It is a cell, and the cell has got also a cytoplasm. So what is the cytoplasm of the muscle cell? A cytoplasm of the muscle cell is known as a sarcoplasm. So basically same as other cytoplasm. This is also a cytoplasm. But a very important thing to note on the skeletal muscle is that a skeletal muscle fiber, a skeletal muscle cell, has got a number of nucleus. As you can see, it has a number of nucleus, and all these nucleus are peripherally located. They are located on, periphery, on the periphery. Again, we know this is a muscle. A muscle will at some point need a source of energy, so it needs a powerhouse that will generate energy, and that is mitochondria. So a muscle cell has got a number of mitochondria. Of course, you see we have a lot of these mitochondria, but so that will be a basic muscular, a basic cell. But it has got also you see all these, so these are sarcoplasmic reticulum. They are almost the same as endoplasmic reticulum. They maybe you can relate to endoplasmic reticulum, but this is a muscular cell. What is so special about the muscular cell is the ability of the muscle to contract and relax, So the muscular cell has got a contractile element, and this contractile element is what is known as myofibril. So myofibril is the contractile element of the muscle tissue, and of course we know that the muscle will store oxygen, even though we can't see the myoglobin, but the myoglobin is special for storage of oxygen. We know that from high school, but we have some other extension of the sarcoplasmic reticulum that we call the terminal system, but don't worry about those. Let's discuss about the myofibril. They are the contractile element of a muscular tissue. So a myofibril is made up of two kinds of contractile element or contractile filaments, and these we call them the thick filament. This one, the thick filament, and then we have these thin filaments. Thin filaments. So we have a thick filament, and a thin filament. And as you can see, most of these thick and thin filaments, they are interdigitating. They are arranged like on one another, so against one another. You see, like we have a thick filament, thin filament, thick filament, thin filament, thick, thin, and these are the actually contractile elements of the muscle cell. So the muscle can contract because of thick and thin filaments that are arranged in an interdigitating manner. So when the muscle contracts, they come together. These thick and thin filaments, they come together, and then when the muscle relaxes, they are moving away from one another. So when you zoom in into these contractile filaments, the contractile elements of the muscle, the myofibril, this is what you can see. Okay, so this one here is the thin filament, this one is the thin filament, and this one is the thick filament. This one is the thick filament. This is the thin filament, and this is the thick filament. Now you know that these thick and thin filaments, they are made up of proteins. So the protein that makes up the thin filament is known as the actin protein. And then we have the protein that makes up the thick filament, which is known as the myosin. So actin and myosin are very, very important when you're discussing about the muscular contraction, because these are the actually what interact to produce a muscular contraction or relaxation. So we have actin and the myosin. The actin is found in the thin filament, and the myosin is found in the thick filament. So let's zoom in this let's zoom in these thin and thick filaments that will slide against one another to produce a movement. So as we have said, a contractile element, a myofibril is made up of thin and thick filament that are interdigitating. Like we have a thin filament followed by a thick filament followed by a thin filament followed by a thick filament, and the cycle goes on. Okay. So the very basic important, the very basic proteins that that should be there are the actin and the myosin. Actin and the myosin are the contractile proteins. So this is the myosin, this is the actin. So this is myosin, this is actin. But we also have some structural proteins that will help, like for example, this one is titin protein. The titin protein will help to produce the recoil, the elasticity. You see, like this is a spring, like, so if you produce that elasticity, what the muscles contract and they want to regain this original shape and length. So that's one among other proteins that are found. Okay, so let's discuss about myosin. So a myosin, you see, like a myosin filament is made up of individual myosin fibers or myosin proteins. A lot of individual myosin proteins will come together to form a myosin filament, which is also known as a thick filament. You see, and every individual, like you see, every is like the golf. It's like a golf crab, the golf crab. Yeah, it's like a golf crab that they are twisted together. The two golf crabs that are twisted together. So for example, this one is a myosin. It's a myosin protein. So myosin protein has got a head and the tail. So it has got a head and tail. Head and tail of the myosin protein. Are we together, guys? So on the other end, this is the actin. This is the actin protein. So the myosin head are the actually ones, the one that will come to, you see, they come to bind to the actin. So the myosin heads are the ones that are going to to bind to the actin, while the tail are pointing to the middle. So the tail does not contribute, the tails do not contribute to the formation of this contraction stuff. Correct? Yeah. So now let's go to the actin. So the actin is made up of a number of other proteins. I mean, this is the actin. The actin is like, this like grape-like, these grape-like stuffs here. So as we have said, we have some other structural proteins. For example, we have the troponin, and we have tropomyosin. You see, like the myosin was about to bind to the actin, to the actin protein. So the actin protein actually possesses a myosin binding site. The actin possesses the myosin binding site, the site that could be bound by the myosin protein. But naturally, in the laxity position, in laxity situation of a muscle, this myosin binding site is covered by the troponin. So by the tropomyosin. So the tropomyosin, this one is the tropomyosin, this one, and this one is also a tropomyosin. So a tropomyosin will always be there to bind the myosin binding site to prevent a sustained contraction. So the tropomyosin is strategically there to prevent the myosin from binding to the actin. Because when myosin binds to the actin, they will produce a contraction. Okay? And we don't need to have contractions all the time, except for some allowed muscular tissues. Some muscular tissues are allowed to have this sustained contraction, of course, but naturally the binding is prevented by the tropomyosin. So what's the function of the troponin? We have seen the tropomyosin is blocking the myosin from binding to the actin, but what's the function of the troponin? Yeah, the function of troponin is to remove the tropomyosin from binding the myosin binding site. Am I clear? So it's like so the troponin will respond into increased level of calcium ions. So the calcium ions are very, very important because the presence of calcium will result into change of shape of this troponin, and once the troponin responds to calcium, it will remove the tropomyosin from the myosin binding site so as the myosin can bind into the actin to produce a movement. Are we together? So that's the function of troponin. What's the function of myosin? So the function of myosin actually is to change the chemical energy into mechanical energy. So you know the law of transformation of energy. Like we have energy that is in form of ATP, and then this energy is needed to produce a movement, because no movement can be made without using energy, right? So the myosin will convert ATP into mechanical energy, the movement energy. So we are able to move because of ATP. That's why if you don't have enough ATP, you cannot even make the movements. For example, people who are like gravely like depleted of energy and all that, but forget about that. So the contraction and the coming together of the myosin and actin will produce a contraction of the skeletal muscle, and then this mechanism is known as the sliding filament mechanism. Why? Because the thin and thick filaments will slide against one another to produce movement. As we've said, they will have like interdigitation that will produce the movements. So here is the cycle of contraction and relaxation. As we've said, the function of the myosin is to convert energy from chemical energy into mechanical energy. So it converts ATP into produce movements, which is mechanical energy. And then we know that it does so by the presence of the calcium. What the function of the calcium? As we've said, the function of calcium, which is of course in the cytoplasm and the interstitial space, is to change the troponin. The troponin will change the tropomyosin. Will remove the tropomyosin from the myosin binding site, and this will all produce the movement, which is the sliding filament movement or sliding filament mechanism. So let's move to the cardiac muscle. The cardiac muscle, the second type of muscular tissue. This one, as from the name, a cardiac. This muscle is only found within the heart. It's only found within the heart, and it makes a lot of the whole of the heart wall, the muscular wall. The cardiac muscle is also striated. It has got also some strips. But the action of the cardiac muscle is involuntary. Why? Because the cardiac muscle responds to its own. It has its own. You all know about the pacemaker of the heart, yeah? So it has got its own source of energy, source of electricity, and it responds to the action potential that is produced within the heart itself, right? But of course, it responds to chemical and electrical stimulation that are coming from the body. But these electrical and chemical stimulation are actually to change on how the heart behaves, but not to initiate the cardiac activity, because the cardiac activity is all initiated within itself by the presence of the pacemaker pacemaker. So the cardiac muscle, and unlike skeletal muscle, it is contracting and relaxes, it contracts and relaxes in a coordinated manner with a rhythm and auto rhythm, and roughly it's about 75 times in a minute. So every minute the heart contracts and relaxes 75 times. So this is a cardiac muscle. The cardiac muscle, it has got this breathing, like you see it has the breathing which wasn't present in the skeletal muscle. You see we have like breathing, so from here to here, and then from here to here, and then here. You see like we have like breathing, and this breathing is known as the stair step appearance. So that is a stair step appearance. It's like you are moving along the stairs. So this is the cardiac muscle, and the cardiac muscle is made up of muscle fibers. The muscle fiber, remember we said muscle fiber, it is a muscle cell or myocyte. So the cardiac muscle we call the cardiomyocytes, and then we see the cardiomyocytes, they are a little bit shorter compared to the muscular cell, to skeletal muscle fibers, and they have junctions. The junction between one cardiac muscle fiber and another is known as the intercalated disc. So this is the intercalated disc, and you see it has like the finger-like projections that will like interdictate as well with the adjacent muscular fiber. And of course at the intercalated disc, at this junction, we have the desmosomes, and the desmosomes help to like bridge these muscles together. But there are also a gap junctions within this intercalated disc, and the function of this gap junction is to to spread the action potential. This one allows the ions to go through, and once the ions are going through, they are spreading the action potential to make sure that the heart will contract as a whole, like to have the coordinated movement when the action potential passes by, right? And then something very, very important to note here is that the difference between the cardiac muscle fiber and the skeletal muscle fiber is that the cardiac muscle fiber, it has got one nucleus, which is centrally located. Unlike the skeletal muscle fibers, we have seen that they have a number of nucleus and they are peripherally located on the periphery. But the cardiac muscle fiber has got one nucleus, and the nucleus is centrally located. But unlike the skeletal muscle, the cardiac muscle has got a numerous number of mitochondria, and they're even bigger than the mitochondria in the skeletal muscle fiber. So here is the cardiac muscle fiber. You see we have the centrally located nucleus, only one nucleus centrally located. But of course we have striations, we have actin and myosin. We have the thick and thin filaments arranged in almost the similar way to the skeletal muscle fiber. We have the transverse tubule, same as there. We have sarcolemma and sarcoplasm, which is almost the same as the skeletal muscle fiber. But you see the mitochondria here, they are very, very, very big, grandissima. They are very big, and they are numerous as compared to the skeletal muscle. The skeletal muscle fiber. So both cardiac and skeletal muscles, they are striated. They are all striated. Why striated? Because of these contracted filaments, the actin and the thin and thick filaments, and of course actin and myosin filaments. All right, so let's talk about the smooth muscle. So a smooth muscle is called the smooth muscle because it lacks the striations, it lacks the strips. So it has got no strips, and that's what makes it smooth. So it's smooth muscle, unstriated. And the smooth muscle, it makes a lot, most of the visceral organs, so from the lungs, from the liver, the stomach, the intestine, the gonads, and the urinary system and all that. So uh, all of them, they're made up of muscular of smooth muscle, which is unstriated muscle is smooth. So if smooth muscle, it does not, it is involuntary muscle. It is involuntary muscle. Does not um, it is not within our command. It's not voluntarily controlled. So it obeys to the autonomic nervous system. It responds to the autonomic nervous control. It responds to autonomic nervous control. So some of the smooth muscles, they have their own auto. They miss it. Okay. For example, like we have seen the propel of food within the gastrointestinal tract, the peristalsis, that is automatically controlled. All right. So as we've said, they are both controlled by the autonomic nervous system. Don't worry about autonomic nervous system. We have a separate discussion about the autonomic nervous system. So let's talk about something here, which is hypertrophy and hyperplasia. But before going to the hypertrophy and hyperplasia, there is something to make clear here. During development, when the baby is still in the uterus, in utero, the muscle fiber, which is myocyte, it is made up of millions, a number of the muscle cells, the muscle building cells, which are known as the myoblast. Okay. let me make it even more clear. During development, the baby in the uterus, the special muscle building cells, which are known as the myoblast. They are muscle building cells, the cells that will build the muscle. So these myoblasts, a lot of them, millions, a number of them, they will come together to form a muscle cell, which is myocyte, when the baby is still in the uterus. So a number of myoblasts will come together to form a muscle cell. So this is also why we have seen that the skeletal muscle fiber, they've got many nucleus. So we've seen they have a lot of nuclei, is because they were formed by different myoblasts that they were combined together to form a matured muscle cell. So a myocyte is the matured muscle cell, and the myoblast is the muscle building cell, the cell that was building the muscle cell. Okay. Yeah. So this fusion occurs in utero, when the baby is in the uterus, and then once the fusion has occurred, these myoblasts, they lose their ability to undergo cell division. Remember, I've told you the myoblasts, they are muscle building cell. How do they build the muscle? It's by undergoing cell division. Okay, so once these myoblasts, they come together to form a myocyte, they lose that ability to undergo a cell division. Okay, so most of the skeletal muscle fibers, after the baby is born, they do not they lose this ability to undergo cell division, and even this is why even the repair is very difficult. The repair of the muscle cell is also difficult, because the muscle, they don't have this, they lose the ability to undergo a cell division. This also explains the fact that a baby is born with all the muscles, almost all the skeletal muscles are present from birth. Why? Because we don't have that ability to undergo the cell division. Why? Because they are fused together. The muscle cells have been fused together. So we have something that is known as the hypertrophy. So hypertrophy is that dramatic increase in the size of the muscle so enlargement in the size of the muscle or the muscle, which is contributed by the increase in size of the individual muscle fibers, because the muscle is made up of the muscle fibers. So increasing the size of the muscle fibers will result into increasing the bulkiness of the muscle, which is known as hypertrophy. And hypertrophy is due to the production of myofibrils. As we've seen, we know what a myofibril is, and then mitochondria and all other organelles that are increased within the cell. But also, we know that the hypertrophy is due to it's a result of very forceful repetitive muscular activity. For example, people who are going to gym to build the muscles, they are going to look for hypertrophy. This is why they are doing repetitive movements, like they're doing the shoulder, for example, they're doing the biceps, they're doing the triceps, and all that is to produce this forceful repetitive muscular activity, which will result into building up of the muscle, which is what is known as hypertrophy of a muscle. But testosterone plays a major role in defining hypertrophy of a muscle. This is why even male are known to be masculine. Yes, male are known to be masculine because of the presence of testosterone, and this is what will differentiate a man from a woman, primarily on basis of muscles, because the muscle testosterone plays a major role in hypertrophy of a muscle. So another terminology is hyperplasia. So hyperplasia is an increase in number of muscle fibers. So we have two different things. We have increase in the size of the muscle, or the size of individual muscle fibers, and we have increase in the number. Hyperplasia increase in the number of muscle fibers. So these are the two different things. So we have clinical correlation here, and it is about the muscular atrophy. Remember, we have atrophy and hypertrophy. I think you guys remember, because we've been discussing about the theory of evolution of man. So we know the law of use and disuse. We'll be discussing about this terminology, hypertrophy and atrophy, the law of use and disuse. So muscular atrophy is a wasting of a muscle, and in the wasting of the muscle, the individual muscle fibers, they are decreasing in size, and they're decreasing in size. So a muscular atrophy is actually the opposite of the muscular hypertrophy. The muscular atrophy is exactly the opposite of the others. So this is a decrease in the size of the muscle fiber, but that was increased in the size of the muscle fiber. So we have two common types of the muscular atrophy. So the muscular atrophy, the decrease in the muscle cells, in the muscle size of the muscle cells, that is due to disuse, like the law of use and disuse. But we also have a decrease of the muscular fiber, decrease of the size of the muscular fiber due to denervation, the lack of the nervous information to the muscle cell. So the law of use and disuse, we know that the muscles that the flow of nerve impulse to the inactive skeletal muscle is reduced, and if you don't have the nerve impulse to the muscle becomes inactive. The muscle is already inactive, and once it's inactive, the nerve supply decreases and the muscle shrinks. Okay, this condition, the disuse and the law of disuse is the disuse atrophy is reversible. For example, a person who has got a hogo, a cast, yeah? So someone has got maybe a fracture somewhere and then put under cast, and the muscle is heading to disuse for a period of time, will eventually find the atrophy. The muscles have decreased in size, but we know once everything recovers and the body part returns into normal functioning, the muscle will regain its original size. So that's reversible. But we know also the bedridden patients, the patients that have been on the bed for a sustained period of time, maybe six months and all that, they will have this reduce the size of the muscle, and that's also known as disuse muscular atrophy. But we also have the other one is a denervation muscular atrophy. So some muscles will atrophy just because they lack the nerve supply. This muscle was atrophying because it is lacking the activity. It is not used. That's why it atrophies. But this one here will atrophy because it lacks the nerve information. It is not put into play. So how does it regain or remains with this function, with this shape? So this is due to cut off or disruption of the nerve supply, and this condition is irreversible. So when the muscle atrophies due to denervation, due to lack or cut off the nerve supply, it will never ever recover. It will never ever assume its original. So this is because the muscle fibers are replaced by the fibrous connective tissue, which is not elastic, which is not extensible, which is not excitable, and which is also not contractable. Yeah, so from the very first part of the discussion, this marks the end, and don't forget to subscribe and follow me in this media, and thank you for watching. See you into the next part real soon.